It's the best show on YouTube. It's the best show on TikTok with the best information and the two best hosts. It's Fluent and Chill with me, Anthony K, and my man Jermaine. Jay, how you doing, man?
Yo, what's up? Trying out these new headphones, man. I want to see what it is.
It's a good look. It's a good look. Listen, for those of you that it's your first time watching or you've seen a few of the episodes, don't forget to subscribe and like and share and set up your notifications because we do this twice a week. NBA edition is this one. And then we have the NFL edition, which you're going to want to see, get you ready for the weekend.
Yeah.
So over the last few weeks, we've been picking a division from the NBA. Mm-hmm. We've been going through a decade in the NBA, and we're going to do both of those things today. Mm-hmm. But I want to start off with something that I wanted to talk to you about yesterday. We didn't get a chance to, but it's been controversial, and I think I'm on the opposite side of most with this one. So you don't know I'm going to spit this on you, so I'm going to throw it right at you and get your reaction. Steph Curry changed the game. I say he didn't. What say you?
I say he did. And the reason why I say he did was because he now made it, first of all, Steph being personable, Steph looking like the common man, Steph looking like everybody else. We could start with that because, you can't really relate, Tone, to a 6'9" guy. You can't really relate to a 6'10" guy on an everyday level. I mean, if you see Steph Curry look like somebody that you would run into in a grocery store. That's first of all. Then number two, we got a guy who expanded the game. He made it cool to shoot the long ball. He now made it cool to throw the ball between your legs and shoot the long ball. Be that kind of ball handler. Be that kind of scorer. He made that cool, and people relate to that, like him, Kyrie Irving, because they look like the common man also. So that helps tremendously. But when you talk about Steph Curry's game, how transcendent it was, nobody was shooting the long ball like that in that volume. Not to say that guys couldn't shoot the long ball, but they weren't shooting it like that with that kind of volume and been able to score in different ways. So I think he absolutely changed the game.
All right. So I'm with you to a point, and then I'll tell you where I disagree, and I think this is where me and everybody are butting heads. In terms of you can relate to him, the things that he does, you can practice shooting from half court and from the logo and those things. Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that. I'm not saying he didn't make it cool or popular. Mm-hmm. I think he did. Just like Michael Jordan made long shorts and short socks popular, just like Allen Iverson made tattoos and cornrows acceptable and popular. Mm-hmm. I'm with you there. But when I say change the game, the debate I've been having is, they weren't shooting threes before Steph. Well, look how many more threes they're shooting because of Steph. Like, he changed the actual way that games are played. Mm-hmm. And here's my argument that says no. Don't get me wrong. I say he is a piece. He is a domino. He might be the third or fourth piece in that domino. But it wasn't like the NBA was sitting around going, okay, let me just post up. Oh, wow, Steph Curry can shoot threes. Oh, we should try that. That's changing the game. That didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So for me, I say, let's take a look. 3-pointers came in 79. Mm-hmm. And every year, the amount of 3-point attempts went up. And that's the average per team. But there were some players and some teams that shot more. Mm-hmm. So one of the arguments I got was, Steph Curry in his MVP year attempted twice as many 3-point attempts than anybody had ever attempted in the history of the league. Mm-hmm. I quickly said, no, timeout. I'm fluent. I do research. I don't just make stuff up. Mm-hmm. 2014-15, he averaged 8 3-point attempts per game. That was not the most in the history of the league. It was not the most in for a season. In fact, it was less than George McLeod in 1995-96 attempted. So no, he didn't double, and that was his first MVP year. So I say, it wasn't that. Again, if you look at the stats, it goes 13, 14, 15, 16, 18. And over the last 10 years, it's gone 18, 20, 21, 23. It goes up 1 or 2 every year. Right now, it's actually plateaued at about 32. So it wasn't like he came into the league, because what did he do his first 7 years? He shot 4, 4, 4, 7, 7. It wasn't until 8. It wasn't until year 7 that he double-digit 3-point attempts per game. Mm-hmm. But what happened before then? One, you had the Spurs who were thinking, hey, we could shoot the long ball. Mm-hmm. You had Mike D'Antoni, who came up with a system of shooting a lot of threes. And if you look at the year he was with the Suns, mm-hmm. he was shooting about double of what the league was averaging. I think the league was averaging 15. His mm-hmm. Suns teams were shooting about 28. Mm-hmm. And did they have success in the playoffs? No. But did they have success in the regular season? Well, yeah, they made Steve Nash a 2-time MVP. They made Amari Stoudemire a superstar because of that style of play. What is the one thread that takes you through all of those? And let me be clear. I'm not saying any one of these things is the reason. I'm saying it was all of them combined. Mm-hmm. Steve Kerr was what as a player?
He was a long ball shooter.
Long ball shooter. He then goes and he is he goes and plays for the Spurs. What did Popovich encourage more so than most coaches?
Shoot the long ball.
Shoot the long ball. He then goes and becomes the general manager of the Suns with coach Mike D'Antoni. What did he do?
Shoot the long ball.
Shoot the long ball. He then goes and becomes the coach of the Warriors, where he finds someone, not one, but 2 players that can knock it down with precision. Maybe the best 2, for sure the best 3-point shooter of all time that we've ever seen in Curry. And then another one who, if you don't have him top 5, he's 6 or 7 in terms of 3-point shooting in Klay Thompson. Mm-hmm. So now he's got, let's say, the 2 best 3-point shooters in the game at that point. And he has a background of, I used to shoot threes. I saw what the success was in Phoenix, right? Regular season. How can we translate that to the playoffs? He had the Spurs background. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to a team that has the best 3-point shooter in the league. Guess what? He then says, go nuts. And puts in a system that allows Curry and Klay to shoot all those threes.
Right.
While all this is happening, mm-hmm. you got some guys, I'm not going to put on my glasses and do my nerd joke again, but you got some guys working on their computer who are doing advanced analytics who say, you know what? A 3-pointer, even though you're going to shoot it on average lower percentage than what you would shoot a mid-range, like a 20-footer, the extra point that it gives you for the dip in field goal percentage is worth it. So instead of shooting that 20, 21, 19-footer, take a step, move back a couple feet and shoot a 3 because it makes more sense from an analytics standpoint. Mm-hmm. And so now you have this, coaches are starting to shoot more threes. Mm-hmm. The league's been increasing the amount of threes every year. Mm-hmm. Players like Steph, and even before him, like there's a laundry list of players who are like, hey, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I might not be able to get to the rim, right? Mm-hmm. Steph can't jump over anybody. What's he going to do? Well, you can shoot further than anybody. So you had guys that are saying, hey, let's shoot from back here. Then analytics, and then coaches allowed it. I always bring this up. You know this. You played in my era. And I was a 3-point shooter. I know I used to pull up 2 steps back of the 3. Mm-hmm. And even though I'd make it, my coach would shake his head. Right. He'd sometimes sit me on the bench and say, hey, run the offense. Run the offense. It's not a good shot. It wasn't not to be a good shot, yeah. And so my contention is Curry made it popular. I agree 100%. Curry made it cool. I agree 100%. Curry did it better than anybody else has ever done it. I agree 100%. But it was the way that the league was going anyways, what the analytics were telling us to do, coaches that put it into actual practice and allowed it to happen. Because Steve Kerr or whoever, Mark Jackson doesn't get enough credit either for what he did with Golden State, so let's give him his props as well. Correct. He could have easily said, hey, you know what? Curry's bad ankles, right? He's not a finisher at the rim, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to have him come off the bench, and you're going to be our 3-point specialist. We're going to bring you in, and you're going to just shoot threes when you can. Right. He could have made that decision. Right. But instead, based on everything that had happened previous, they were like, no, let's make this a superstar kind of integral part of our offense, and it worked. So that's why I say he didn't change the way the game was being played. He took what they were doing and said, yep, this can work. Right. And then him and Klay and others, right, made it, you can actually win this way too. Because that was always the thing against D'Antoni. Yeah, he can score a lot of points. He'll win a lot of regular season games. Right. They're not winning in the playoffs because you still needed defense. You still needed other things. Right. So that's my argument. Did I sway you a little bit, or do you understand kind of where the separation is?
I do understand, because it sounds like it was going that way anyway. We just need somebody to push it over the top. Okay, I can absolutely get with that logic. However, it still wasn't something that was prevalent. It's still, I mean, guys still shot the long ball, but teams didn't build their teams around long ball shooters. Teams didn't build their offenses around shooting the long ball before Steph Curry, Klay Thompson.
The Suns did. But the Suns did.
The Suns did, and it didn't work. And what I mean when I say it didn't work, they got to the conference finals. The difference is that they didn't win it. Once the teams won it, now we could actually do this because this is like the NFL, like Major League Baseball. This is a copycat league. And once somebody does something and it works, boom, that's what we're doing. Now, your logic is, well, we were going that way anyway. Just somebody actually, we were all inventing the wheel. Somebody actually just got it to roll. That's all it was. We were all doing it. But with Steph Curry, not only did his team win, him changing the game, meaning his team able to shoot the long ball and win and become a jump shooting team. Now everybody's doing that. So now the Golden State Warriors doing it. Oklahoma City, when they had James Harden and KD. LeBron James is now shooting, not now, but back then, LeBron James is now shooting more threes. And everybody's doing that because this is the formula to win. And Steph Curry is at the forefront of that. Now,
but is it, so let me pause there. Is it the formula to win? Because who's won that way? The Warriors. Okay. Why did they win that way? Mm-hmm. They had two guys that could do it better than anybody else in the league, right, and a coach that said, yeah, let's do it, and gave them the freedom to do it. Who else has won that way?
Well, nobody else has won that way because they couldn't do it as well as those two guys could do it, and that's why they won it that way. And right. if there was anybody else who could do it, then they would have won it, which goes back to my original logic that this is a copycat league. Everybody started doing it. The reason why the Warriors was winning because can't nobody else do it like we do it, and that's the difference. That's when I say Curry changed the game in the aspect of teams being jump shooting teams and teams winning that way. Now, Steph Curry as a player, I mean, you can appreciate this. I mean, Larry Bird shot the long ball. Dale Ellis shot the long ball. Craig Hodges shot the long ball.
His dad.
Right. Exactly.
Dale Curry. Right?
That's where he got it from. His father shot the long ball. So it wasn't something that was unheard of. It's just the difference is teams weren't winning that way. You get Steph Curry in with another long ball shooter and teams are winning that way. Now we're going to switch this whole thing up and we're going to play basketball like that. So
I guess, I mean, hey, maybe it's semantics. So we'll end it on this and we'll move on.
All right.
So my thing was that alone, he didn't do it. It was a trend that was occurring, and him and Klay and the right coach, right, came in and had the right system with the right players. And then it was kind of that, it was the crescendo. Like he was, you know what? It was a relay race, right? And so they started it off and they gave it to Curry. And Curry was the anchor. He brought it home and brought the gold. But let's not completely ignore the 1, 2, and 3 runners in that relay that kind of gave him the baton to go to run with.
And remember, just like you just said too, Tone, and remember, Mark Jackson had him playing the 1, and he had him in the traditional point guard sense. Steph Curry was averaging 8 assists. He was a distributor.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. He was only averaging about, like I said, 4 threes a game.
Yeah, he was a distributor. That's what Mark Jackson had him doing. And then Steve Kerr comes in and he completely switches up the offense. So great point. So let's say they don't fire Mark Jackson. Let's say Mark Jackson remains and says, you're the traditional point guard doing this. Mm-hmm. Do you think the 3-point barrage just never happens? I think it still does because you cannot not shoot the long ball. And you can't have guys like Curry and Klay Thompson who shoot the long ball like that, not part of your offense. I don't know if Steph Curry had a season where he shot, I think, 8 long balls a game. I don't think that's going on. Absolutely not.
That was his MVP year in 2014-15. He shot 8 a game.
I don't think that's going on. No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that, I guess that's my point is that look, I get it. He's the face of it. Mm-hmm. He's the face of it. But I maybe it's more, I just want to give recognition to the foundation to what allowed that to happen. Yeah. So that's my tirade on Steph Curry. It's you know how it is, because I say he didn't change the game. Everyone's like, what do you mean? He doesn't suck. I said, no, I give him Yeah, I never said that. I said
Wait
he's
a
the
minute.
greatest 3-point shooter we've ever seen. And
How we go from he didn't change the game to he sucked? Wait a
yeah,
minute. Whoa.
you know how people
Wait, what?
are. You know how they are. It's like he's the best 3-point shooter. I never said. One guy actually made a video and he said, "How can you say he was one of the integral pieces, one of the dominoes, and he didn't change the game?" Well, that's my point. Is let's say he's the third domino. You still need the first two to knock down the third one,
and you still need all the rest of them too.
And then you need the rest of them.
Right?
They easily could have said, "Yeah, that works for him and Golden State.
Yeah,
we're not doing this, right?" No, anyways. I'm done with it. Just that was my point. So let's rewind now, and we go back to our day.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to our day, and I'm going to run through the NBA.com all 90s decade team. Do a little reminiscing. Talk about some of the second and third team. What has changed from the 80s to the 90s, and then we'll get into the North Division. So we're going to get a rundown of Minnesota, Denver, Utah, Portland, and OKC. The first one on the list is no surprise. I don't know if you've heard of him. Hey, let me ask you a question. Who's the greatest basketball player to ever come out of New York?
The greatest basketball player to ever come out of New York. Jabbar.
You have Jabbar over Jordan?
He was born in Brooklyn. I
normally ask it differently. I like, who's the best player born in New York? And everyone's like Jabbar. I'm like, you got Jabbar over Jordan? And then he was born in New York. Everyone just assumes he's from Charlotte.
Right.
I think it's just the all right. So yeah, so Jordan's one. No surprise. You either have him 1 or 2 on your all-time list. If you don't, you're probably not watching basketball. Do we need to go into Jordan? Like
No.
6-0, 6 Finals MVPs, blah blah blah. Yes, Jordan's amazing. Number 2. So the other guard of the 90s. People always I don't know why they underestimate this guy. You want to talk about a guy who looks like the everyman, the one who is like, I can do what he does, but you probably can't.
No,
just FYI, because his arms were like metal bars. They weren't actual flesh. People don't know how strong John Stockton was, but when it comes to steals, assists, longevity, just pretty much everything, defense, people underestimate this guy's defense. John Stockton averaged 11.9 assists and 2.3 steals a game for the decade. Not in the season, for the decade.
For the decade.
You go.
And to give you a quick synopsis, I was at a Jazz game my junior year in college in Utah. I was at a Jazz game. When I tell you, Tone, Stockton pulls up in a minivan.
Yeah, of course.
All 3 of his kids get out. He's got on the dad hat, and he's got on it looked like a men's only jacket that they had. If you didn't know who he was, if you never heard of him, and I told you that dude is the starting point guard for the Utah Jazz, and he's arguably the best point guard in the NBA, you'd be like, okay, I'm done talking. You can go. You don't know anything. No, absolutely not. Yes, absolutely. You know where I am on John Stockton. In my opinion, he's the second best point guard in the history of the NBA. I put him behind Magic.
Now let me just put this out there because we're going to get a lot of comments, and feel free to comment. But that's only because you have Curry and Iverson kind of in a separate category all to themselves. So I'll put that out there. So yeah, 8 All-Star games in the 90s, 9 All-NBA teams. He's 4th. People, if you go into advanced analytics, he's 4th in win share. I think if he has 1 ring, we're having a different conversation about Stockton.
Completely different.
And that's a shame. Because there's so many great players that don't have rings.
Don't leave out neither, Tone. I'm also a 5-time All-League defender too. I do play on both sides of the basketball. I'm not just a distributor. I'm not just a mid-range shooter. I lock up too, just so you know.
And that's why I was saying, people forget his defense, or they underestimate his defense. Look, I don't. I never bring up race. However, they see because I know I live this, right? I'm a 6'3" white dude, and they were like, oh yeah, 6 foot white dude. He's gonna be slow. He's gonna be unathletic. No, man, he was not slow. He was athletic. He could D you up. And like I said, I don't know if you hear these stories where, John would come through a pick and give me an elbow. And you see this guy's like 6'9", 250. And he's like, I felt that in my chest. Like, he was strong too. People underestimate that. There's a lot of guys who didn't win rings here on this 90s team. And it's probably because you had The Bulls winning 6 and the Rockets winning 2. So that's 8
because of the first guy we talked about. That's
yeah, there's 8 rings gone out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one who, it's sometimes good to just fade off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens when you stay in front of people, they see you age and then they think you're that person. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks Charles Barkley is this huge, overweight, slow guy that can't golf, who says crazy stuff, who you don't understand half the things he's saying. But they forget that he's one of the greatest power forwards to ever play basketball. And in the 90s, he's on this team. He's an MVP. 22.4 points, 11.6 rebounds, 4.2 assists. And he led the Phoenix Suns to a 60-win season in 93.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Barkley was 6'4". I don't care what anybody says because I've stood eye to eye with him. He's 6'4", mm-hmm. And he played power forward, and he could get up and down the court as good as anybody, and could jump. Like you see some of those alley oops and off misses, rebounds that he. Chuck is not the guy you see on TNT.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Tone, because the conversation that you and I had just a couple minutes ago about Steph Curry changing the game. When I think about a guy who changes the game, I think about a guy who, we very rarely see anything like that again. So when I think about Steph Curry, I see people trying to imitate his game, and Trae Young is in that category. Have we seen anybody like Charles in the last 30 years?
Maybe Zion, maybe
in transition like that. The transition.
No. He's still
ball
young.
Handler, right? Rebounder. So when I think about a guy like Charles, who led the league in rebounding at 6'4", 6'5", they had him listed at 6'6", but led the league in rebounding. Was the transition player that he was. He didn't really look like much, but he was a ridiculous athlete. Charles wasn't a good athlete. He was a ridiculous athlete. He had a money mid-range game. He was tough as nails. You could go to him on the block. And this is during the time when the big man and that was when the game was played through the big man. So he had to deal with guys like Malone and Kevin McHale and Sean Kemp and Michael Cage, dirty work guys, Oakley. And he was dominated. He was dominating these guys. So I can appreciate when you see Charles on TNT and you see him on Inside the NBA, because he's the funny part. Just so you know, Charles was incredible. Charles was not a good player. He was incredible.
It's interesting. We talk about players and moving them from one era to the other. Wouldn't he be great in today's fast-paced, kind of up and down, smaller guys playing the forward position? Like, I get it, he couldn't shoot threes, although he really tried. Do you know who has the lowest I kind of gave away the answer, but do you know who has the absolute lowest three-point shooting percentage of anyone who attempted 100 or more?
Absolutely.
He loved shooting. Loved shooting them. Missed them all, but he loved shooting.
Mm-hmm.
But he would be great in today's NBA, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you go from Chuck to kind of the prototypical, when people say in the 90s there were plumbers and electricians and stuff, they weren't in, physical fitness wasn't a thing. I point to this guy very often because you'd see Karl Malone flex his arm and you would think later on in his career he would do this. You would think he was a wrestler. Dude was just a big, like he's a hunter, a fisherman. Like he's just like, he probably bench presses trees. Like just a big, big dude who happened to average, by the way, 27.2 points a game, 10.7 rebounds, almost 4 assists. And let's be honest, if it wasn't for Jordan, one, he probably has another MVP under his belt. But two, he's got his ring, and we're talking about the second all-time leading scorer ever, only behind Kareem, is Karl Malone. And because of, I don't know why, maybe the off-the-court stuff, we don't, and maybe the ring. Does the ring mean that much?
Yes, clearly it does. And the reason why it does is because I'm getting whispers now from people saying to me, if Russell Westbrook wins the NBA championship, we got to start talking about him in the top 5 point guards all time. And I'm thinking, really? I don't think so. No,
I don't think so. Yeah,
we're not doing that.
Do you discredit? I know I'm going to talk football. Do you say that Dan Marino isn't one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time because he doesn't have a ring?
Tone, let me tell you something right now, and really quick. We're gonna get right back to this. That conversation makes, and we're gonna have this conversation on Thursday. That makes me nuts because you won the NBA championship or because you won the Super Bowl, then Eli Manning is not better than Dan Marino. No, he is not.
Trent Dilfer? Trent Dilfer? Was it Brad Johnson in Tampa
Absolutely
that year?
Not. Brad Johnson is not better than Randall Cunningham. No, he is not. No, he isn't. So,
you brought up Russ. Like, so if Russ isn't in your top 5 now, how does winning a ring, no offense, but how does winning a ring with LeBron, AD, Carmelo, Dwight, Rondo, how does that bump him up the list?
It doesn't. It doesn't. Now, to talk to you about Malone, really quick, Tone. Number one, Karl Malone doesn't play pickup in the offseason. And he doesn't play pickup in the offseason because after his rookie season, he played pickup and he rolled his ankle. So he stopped playing pickup. He doesn't touch a basketball until September. His workout program in the summer, he's in Louisiana chopping trees.
There you go. Yeah.
That's what he's doing in the summertime.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
That's what this dude is doing in the summertime. And we're talking about a guy who was the consummate pro, right? He was 27-11, 27-12. You now can run the offense through the 4-man. Because back then, the 4-man was your dirty work guy. That's all he did. The offense ran through the 5. Your shooting guard was your shooting guard. Your small forward was your transition player. And your 4-man was your dirty work guy. He got rebounds. He was AC Green. He was Michael Cage. He was Charles Oakley. He wasn't the guy we were running the offense through. And Malone was absolutely that guy. He had a money mid-range game. 6'9", 255 pounds, and ran like a deer. We hadn't seen anything like that from that guy. He was a finisher. He had this one thing that he used to do, Tone, which I thought was the most beautiful thing, where he would bury you right underneath the basket, right underneath it, where Stockton would get him the ball, where you couldn't block the shot. You were either going to foul him or you were going to hit your hand on the rim. That was it. And he was the master at that. Malone, if he would have won it, and not just win it, to beat Jordan, that's the only reason why I put Duncan ahead of him, because he didn't win it. Yeah. That would be it. That's the only difference. But Karl Malone is he's phenomenal.
People give a lot of credit. People give a lot of credit to Stockton for Malone's success, and I always challenge them to, of course, listen, the two were great together. Mm-hmm. But I always challenge them. I challenge everybody to do this. Go back and watch the Utah Jazz play. Because yes, John Stockton, of course, helped get a lot of his points on fast breaks. He was such a great passer, etc. But also look at the half court. To your point, John Stockton was most often giving it into Malone, and Malone was then kind of dictating what happened else around him. Mm-hmm. Either he'd be posting up or he'd kick it back out, either to Stockton or to Isley or somebody who's going to shoot a 3, or what's his name, Brian Russell. Right. He was like you said, he was running the offense from the low block, which was not common, and people forget that. The last one is a center that he's one of those other ones that I feel like it's like how do we really need to talk about him as much? Because if you don't know the center that had the greatest footwork maybe of any center in the history of the NBA, who could play offense, who could play defense, who's the only other player, I believe, other than Jordan, to win 2 NBA championships without having one All-Star teammate, who took a team that probably shouldn't have won an NBA title. I want to say the second one the 94-95, and still doesn't get enough. The guy who LeBron James and many others went to and said, "Can you teach me?" Right, when superstar all-time great players are coming to you,
Dwight Howard.
They're coming to you. Guys. They're coming to you and saying, "Can you teach me?" That bumps you up my list. Just Hakeem Olajuwon was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. I never seen anybody with, number one, at that size, that agile. And I mean, Bill Walton had a great quote where he said he never saw Olajuwon do the same move twice in a game.
He might be right. He might be right.
That's how good he was. And we're talking about a guy, Tone, who, when he retired, he's the only guy in NBA history to retire in the top 10 in points, rebounds, blocks, and steals. Like, these how many guys in the history of the NBA can say that they did that when he quit. He was an anchor on defense. He was the guy who we're running the offense through. And to give you an idea, my good buddy, my best friend to this day, got drafted by the Rockets in '97. He said Olajuwon came to him and he told him, "I'm going to make your job easy." And he said, "How?" He said, "Give me the ball." I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how much easier it can be. It sounds very simple to me. He said, "Just give him the ball. I'll give you the ball. No problem."
Love it.
He had the agility of a guy our size. He had the speed of a guy our size. His ability to counter guys who, like David Robinson and Ewing and Shaq, guys who you couldn't just give them one move. His ability to counter moves, his ability to step out. Olajuwon would be incredible today. Olajuwon wouldn't be good today. Olajuwon would be one of the better. He wouldn't be one of the better centers. He would be one of the better players in the game today. No question about it. No doubt.
How many players have you heard Michael Jordan say, I'm kind of afraid of him. He is so good.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Tone, because I get a lot of that about, what if the Rockets, I can tell you right now, Tone, I think that I don't think that Jordan was scared of anybody, but I think he won't admit this, I think that he is absolutely ecstatic that they couldn't get out of the Western Conference, because I don't think he wanted anything to do with Olajuwon.
Let me put an end to this very bad rumor. Jordan did not retire, right? Because he was afraid of the Rockets. Because the Rockets, let's be honest, they hadn't shown that they can make it to the finals.
Right.
So he wasn't running. That being said, what the Rockets, or specifically Olajuwon, did was the biggest weakness that the Bulls always had. Right? They would throw out 3 7-footers at you, but let's be honest, you're talking Wennington, Purdue, Luke Longley, Cartwright. Yeah, Cartwright was 1,000 years old by that point at the 94-95 season. He would have dominated. Now, for the Bulls fans, let me just say, you guys had your own kind of advantage, right? There was no one on the Rockets that was going to stop Jordan and Pippen and those guys either. So it would have been so. I get it. I understand why he retired, but man, that would have been a nice. That would have been so good to see those two teams play for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. So the second team, I'm just going to run through the whole team and just you pick out anybody you want. Mm-hmm. So we've got, and I don't think there's any surprises here: Gary Payton, Clyde Drexler, Scottie Pippen, Sean Kemp, David Robinson.
Nice. I got a question that was asked to me, and I got into this debate. Was Scottie Pippen ever a top 5 player in the NBA? And I said yes, and I stand by that.
Ever? Okay, I got to someone asked me a question, and I think it's because of you. Mm-hmm. Because ever, the season that Jordan retired, where I think he was second in MVP voting, he was a top 5 player in the NBA.
I think it was the 95-96 season, actually. I thought
the 95-96 season was the one that I was asked specifically, and I said no. But I said no because of 2 things. One, it's his defense that has to pick him up, because he was, I think, 25th in terms of scoring. So it wasn't his offense. He was 19, I think, 6-6 or 19, 7-6. So offensively, he was good, but he wasn't a top 5 offensive player. His defense was top 5, however. And then I asked myself a question. I stole this from you. I'm going to be honest, right? When you say this person should be here, well, who do you pull out? So who do you pull out? Do you pull out Jordan, Olajuwon, David Robinson, Karl Malone?
That's as far as I'm going, Tone. That's it.
So, and then maybe Shaq? You think he's better than Shaq?
Yes, that season, yeah. And the reason why I'm saying that, we're talking about a dude at that time going in the 95-96 season, first team All-NBA for the 3rd straight year, first team All-Defense for the 3rd straight year. So I'm elite on both sides of the basketball. Nobody else could say that for 3 straight years, except him.
So I have him 6 or 7 that year only because Shaq, here's how I think. I'm starting a team. I have 2 guys to pick, Pippen or Shaq. Who am I taking? And I'm taking Shaq to start my team.
Of course.
So that's at that time. Yeah, at that time. So that's why I'm like, he's right there. Don't get me wrong. I think he's right there in 95-96. But that's why I think those 5 for me, I pick over him. So that's why I say, is he 5? No, he's top 10 without question. Yeah. And I think 95-96 was the best season he had with Jordan.
Right.
Because other than the 2 seasons or 1 3/4, I guess, seasons without Jordan, I think he played obviously because he was asked to do more and he did more. But I think that was the best one where in the first kind of three-peat / those first 5 years even, he was very much kind of, Jordan was pushing him. He's trying to find his place. He understood he was the second guy. Then he got the opportunity to lead and said, hey, I can actually do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think he built up some confidence that year and 3 quarters. And then I think that 95-96 season, he really kind of came into his own as, hey, we don't have to be Batman and Robin. We could be Batman and Batman.
Right.
And then after that, then he had some injuries the next couple of years. So I think that's where he starts to kind of.
You just mentioned, Tone, in the 93-94 season when he was when he finished, I think, 3rd in the league in MVP votes. No player in NBA history was on a team that won 55 games or more and was first or second on that team in points, assists, rebounds, blocks, and steals. Did not win the league MVP. No player except Scottie Pippen is the only player in NBA history to not win the league MVP and do all of that stuff.
Who won? Do you know who won the MVP that year?
Oh, absolutely. It was Olajuwon, and it wasn't close.
Okay,
he won Defensive Player of the Year. He won league MVP, and I can appreciate that.
I was going to say, sometimes I ask questions I know the answer because you bring that up and people go, "Oh, he got robbed." No, he didn't get robbed. It was because
Olajuwon. Hang on,
Olajuwon won it.
Yeah, hang on now. Let's not make it sound like he lost to somebody like Drexler or something like that. No, he didn't.
Right? Yeah, exactly. No. He lost to a well-deserving kind of winner. Yeah. All right. Here's the third team, and man, this team is filled with a couple of superstars, but 3 players that my heart breaks because of what could have been, and for different reasons. So Penny Hardaway, obviously, the injuries. I wish we could have seen him play. Like Magic Johnson with a jump shot.
Losing Shaq was the difference.
And losing Shaq, yeah.
Losing Shaq was the difference.
Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller's another one of what could have been because he stayed on long enough to where the Pacers should have won a championship. And if it wasn't for the malice at the palace that got, Ron Artest kicked out of the league, got Jax suspended for so long. And I actually think the year before, when they lost to Detroit, they were still the better team. Like they lost to Detroit. Detroit went on to beat the Lakers. I still think the Pacers were the better team that year, even though they lost the series.
I had them winning the NBA championship that year. The Malice in the Palace here, I had them winning the NBA championship that year.
Yeah. Oh, I think most people did. It was. And I feel bad. Look, I don't feel bad for Ron Artest running into the stand and doing that. I don't feel bad I feel bad for Reggie. Reggie was a consummate professional. Always, clutch player, great player, always did the right thing, was a good dude. He deserved, played in a time when, again, those 90s teams, you didn't really have a chance. There was 2 teams that took 80% of the titles. Dennis Rodman, don't need to talk too much about him. I have him as one of the greatest defensive players of all time, probably the best rebounder of all time.
Love Dennis.
And then, so another one like Penny, Grant Hill. Grant Hill could do everything on the basketball court. And again, if it wasn't for injuries, I wish we could have seen what that career would have looked like.
People ask me a lot of times, like, what ifs? And I tell them, I make it crystal clear, Tone. Whoever you put what ifs in, when you say Grant, with the exception of Len Bias, he's the only one. Whenever you ask me, what if this person in Grant Hill, I'm telling you right now, it's Grant Hill. For me, I can't say anybody else. For me, it's Grant Hill. We're talking about a dude who was, I think, his first 6 seasons in the NBA, from 94 to 2000, he was All-NBA 5 times. Tone, you know how I feel about being an All-NBA performer and an All-League defender. I think that's a big deal. And Grant Hill was an All-NBA performer 5 of the 6 seasons when he first came into the league. So anytime you ask me, what if this guy or Grant Hill, I'm telling you right now, the answer is Grant Hill. I actually been a top 10 player had he not gotten hurt.
Oh, 100%. I agree with you 100%. And I think the only reason I don't put Len Bias in that conversation, or I pick Grant Hill over, we never actually got to see Len play in the NBA.
Right.
And so, would his college game, he had all the tools we thought, but would it have, translated to the NBA? I think it would have, but I never got to see him play. So when I talk about Reggie, Penny, heck, I even talk, Drazen Petrovic, because I saw what he could do in the NBA, a glimpse, and I said, I wish I could have saw more. Right? It's I was talking about running backs, and I always bring up Gale Sayers. I wish I could have seen him play longer. There's those guys that you saw them at the professional level, and you saw them be great, and they got hurt. Right? Bo Jackson, another football example.
Right.
And so with Len, I think he would have been great if I had seen him play 1 season and be like, oh wow. I think I'd probably put him higher on my list only because he never got to show us. Right. The last one is probably only because he came in late in the that's why he's a third team. And we're going to talk about him in the 2000s, but is Shaq.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anyone more dominant or like ridiculous to talk? We talked about Curry and we talked about, John Stockton as we could relate to them, right? They're 6 foot. They're, you can't relate to Shaq. Mm-hmm. He just went in and did everything that an athletic kind of guard or forward would do. He just happened to be like 7'1" and almost 300 pounds.
Well, Tone, answer this question for me. Today, fast forward the clock to 21-21. How are we talking about a guy who's running around in the NBA that's tearing down backboards and breaking stanchions? How are we talking about him?
Greatest player in the league.
We got a guy with you
he's everywhere.
Center, and he's tearing down backboards, and you're like, "What the hell is going on? Who is this guy?"
They had to reinforce the backboards they used. They had to talk about changing the game. They had to change. They had to literally change the apparatus that we use to play the game because of him. Although he wasn't the first. Let's put that out there. He wasn't. He wasn't the first to break a backboard. Apologies. I love this one. No one. If you didn't make this list, you didn't make the list.
It wasn't good enough. Sorry.
It wasn't good enough.
Nope.
Man, all right. So that's the 90s. Is there one thing that stands out to you the most from the 90s? Like just when you think back, do you like, oh man, this was if I had to describe the 90s in one sentence to like someone from another planet, what's the thing basketball? I'm talking basketball.
What was the one thing, if I had to describe one thing, if I had to say one thing, fantastic, man. That's what the 90s were. It was incredible because I think about just that Bulls team. I'm also a huge fan of domination too, Tone. I dig because I know the work that goes into being dominant and to watch the Bulls do what they did during that decade. That was a big deal, man. That's probably the one thing that stands out to me the most. I mean, we had a lot of great players in the 90s. When you talk about the NBA in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, we had a lot of great players in the 90s. And for that Bulls team to dominate the way that they did, that was incredible.
The amount of teams that were able to three-peat in the NBA, the list is short. It's the 2000 Lakers, the 90s Bulls who did it twice, and the Celtics, right?
That's it.
And that's it.
That's it.
So when you talk about great teams, how do you not say the team that did it twice? That only 2 other teams did. Now, granted, the Celtics won more than that. They win 8 or 9, 10, whatever the heck they won. But they did it twice in the 90s. And that's when I think about it. I think of like, I don't want to say a resurgence of the NBA because I really think that was the 80s. Mm-hmm. But to think that, the 70s, there was a problem. Magic and Larry saved the league. Mm-hmm. And what Jordan and the crew, I don't want to just put it on him because even you go to the 92 Dream Team, they truly made basketball global. Right, I give credit. I said this last week when we talked about the 80s. I give credit to Magic and Bird for saving the NBA because if it wasn't for them, there might not be an NBA. Mm-hmm. And then I give Jordan and Barkley and Olajuwon and Ewing and I'm going to miss a bunch of guys. All those guys they made it global. They if you remember, and I do, I actually have every single game of the 92 Dream Team on VHS. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm going to do with it because I don't have a VCR, but I still have them. If anyone wants to buy them, let me know. Yeah. And I remember watching those games. Guys from the other countries were coming in, shaking their hands, taking pictures, asking for autographs. You just made this a global game. And guess what? Look at the amount of players. Look at the amount of top 25 players there are in the league international now since back then. Mm-hmm. Someone did like this whole, like a graph and they were showing like there was like 1 and then went to 10. Mm-hmm. And now it's like if you look at the top 5 players, just look. The last 3 MVPs have been non-US born players. Granted, it was Giannis doing it twice, but that started back then, right? Those guys, the interest in basketball started globally or expanded globally from that point. I always say, like, don't look at it today and say, oh, Giannis is great. Well, Giannis is only doing what he's doing because this became a global thing, right? There's so many great Canadian players. Right. Let's be honest, because Vince Carter came and everyone was like, wow, I want to play basketball. Like, you got to look at those things in time that kind of shoot it off.
To piggyback off your point, Tone, I don't know who Tony Kukoc is before they go over to Barcelona. I don't know him. I have no idea who Tony Kukoc is. The Dream Team introduced us to Tony Kukoc. The Dream Team introduced us to all of these
Sabonis.
Sabonis. All of these great players, because now the game is global, and now these guys are coming over. Oh, I remember him from the Olympics. Oh, I remember this guy. Now here comes Dirk Nowitzki. Here comes Kukoc. Marshallonis is now becoming a bigger deal because we don't know who these people are. Now they go overseas and they go to Barcelona, and now they're showing us who these guys are. So they absolutely made the game global, no question about
it. It gave them some definite exposure, although there was still, let's be honest, there was still a hesitation until maybe the 2000s to draft. Yeah. Like I remember, we always talk about, when we talk about best players that had never played in the NBA, I always bring up this name because it's an Oscar Schmidt. And the only reason he didn't play in the NBA is because they were hesitant to take a chance on a non-American player, and he dropped in the draft and said, "Forget this. I'm just staying." I think was in Spain.
Yeah,
I was, and he's just like, "Forget it. I'm not doing it." And it's because he dropped in the draft. He would have been great to see in the NBA.
Right.
All right. So let's jump. We're going to finish it off with a rundown of the Northwest. I'm going to start with the teams that, let's be honest, I'm not too high on, and then we'll finish off with the teams I think we are. So OKC still has, I think, 237 draft picks left in the next.
Well, the draft, they used 15 of them, so they down to like 197 now or something like that. So anyway,
there might be a draft where the first 10 picks are OKC. Right. They better be able to put a team together.
Yeah.
Do you expect? Got a nice young core of talent. I like what they're kind of putting together, but are they in the conversation playing even?
I don't think that they're in the play-in tournament, but I do think that they're going to be competitive. I like the fact that they extended Shea. I like that, and I'm really digging this kid Lou Dort. I love everything about him. The Australian kid, he looks green more than anything. He looks really green, and he looks like it's gonna be a process with him, but it's going to be a while before Oklahoma City. But they like I said, the upside to them is they're building it through the draft. And I think that if they could convince Shea of what they're doing and he can understand that, I think that they're going to be a team that's going to be good in the future. Absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, for anybody who's in Canada, I know you get a lot of messages from Canadians. Check out OKC because Shea and Dort are both proud Canadians, so that should be, if you don't have a team in the NBA, it might be OKC.
Lou Dort is from Canada. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes, sir. We got two. We got two down there in OKC.
I did know Shea was Canadian. I did not know Lou was Canadian. Nice.
Okay. You know what I think? Look, you answer that. I'll ask you a question. You tell me if I'm crazy. I think if they can do a good job in the draft, obviously that's the key. But I think they can. And do you think they will? They can accelerate this. Right, they can bring in these guys and say, okay, because there's going to be redundancy when you have that many young players and that many draft picks. You're going to have some and then showcase them, package them, right, for the star, because you're going to need a star to play alongside Shea. Is that, you think, their real long-term plan, or is it, hey, let's just grow these guys and see the ones that work and keep those and just kind of toss out the rest?
When you're talking about a team like Oklahoma City, exactly like Minnesota, like Portland, like San Antonio. This is how you have to do it. You're not like Miami, you're like New York or Los Angeles, where you're high on a big time free agents list. So packaging 2-1s and Lou Dort, or packaging 3-1s and the first pick in the draft is this kid, and you want him, hand over Devin Booker or something like that. I don't mean Devin Booker exactly, but
no, I mean the player of that caliber,
something like that, where you got a young guy that's playing alongside Shea. That could very well be the plan, because again, their ability to develop guys, it's working, because you see what Shea's doing. Shea's getting better. So their ability to develop guys, Lou is getting better. So these teams will see that man, these guys are getting better. So maybe, possibly, we could package 2-1s and this to get a next level superstar.
Yeah. So let me listen. I'm not trying to start a beef with New York, but please don't put New York in that list of places free agents want to go. They're just always on the list from the media. No big time free agent is going to New York. Not as long as James Dolan is the owner. I'm sorry. I hate to say it, because I like it when New York is good, but no big name free agents going to New York. I'm sorry. Just let's end that right now until something changes.
You're going to change your tune. I don't know, Tony. You might be changing your tune on that soon. You might be.
If they hire me. All right. So that's OKC. the other name you mentioned too, and this is another one that, man, how much talent goes through Minnesota that they can't get it done?
Well, the question that I need answered with them is, what exactly is the plan there? All right, because I saw Anthony Edwards, and he just looks like he's getting better. He doesn't look like a guy who's just showing up. He looks like he's getting better.
Yeah, he needs some lessons in basketball though, but I'll say that at the end.
Yeah, he looks like he's getting better, man. So and I think that you got your all NBA performer unofficially in Cat.
Yep.
And with D'Angelo Russell, if he could just hold up and stay healthy. If he could just hold up and stay healthy, these guys can actually make some noise in the Western Conference. They absolutely can, but that's the difference with those guys. I mean, I watch Anthony Edwards, and he looks to me like a more athletic version of Mitch Richmond. That's what he looked like.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
That's who he looks like to me. And if this team, if they could just hold up, especially D'Angelo Russell in particular, if they could just hold up, I think that they can make some noise. I don't know about the play-in tournament, but I definitely think that they can make some noise in the Western Conference. Absolutely. Because I think that this year has to be, this is a pivotal year because I think Cat has just about had it. He's in year 7 now. So at this point, if they don't make some noise and show that, and we were talking about a dude in Cat who been to the playoffs one time since he's been there. And if they don't make some noise, I think he's going to axe out.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Let me ask you a question. Someone asked me to do a comparison, Cat versus Rudy Gobert. Like, which player would I take? And I quickly said, I was like, I'm taking Cat. He just does so much more. But their rebuttal was, yeah, but Rudy Gobert kind of helps his team win more. Is there a problem? Is there a problem with Cat's defense?
He ain't the defender that he's not the rim protector.
No, I know he's not the defender that Gobert is it for sure, but
I think a lot of that has to do with I've said this to you in the past, Tone. That's that all NBA spot that Rudy has, that's Cat spot. And the only reason why he ain't on it is because Minnesota is trash. That's the only reason why. If Minnesota was better, and I understand Rudy Gobert being first team all, not just first team all defense, but defensive player of the year. We're talking about a guy in Cat who's 23-12. He hasn't missed, I think he missed 1 to 2 games a season. He's very durable, shoots the long ball at almost 40%. He's an elite rebounder. He does rim protect. He might not rim protect like Rudy Gobert. He might not rim protect like Clint Capella, but he's still one of the better defenders in the game. And I just, when you comparing the two, like I just told you, Tone, the reason why Rudy Gobert, that's Cat's spot on that all NBA team. And if Minnesota was better, Rudy Gobert, he either moves up to the second team or he got to come off because Cat got to go on it. That's the only reason why he's not on it.
So I mentioned Anthony Edwards needs some basketball lessons. He has Kevin Durant as the greatest player of all time.
Can you believe that?
No, I can't. That's
I heard that. I was like, what?
Talk about a recency bias from a young guy. All time, I was like, whoa. They said, like, I remember the question was like today, and he's like, no, all time. So anyway, that's my thing on Minnesota. All right, the next team. So these 3 teams are in the conversation. I think I agree. I'll start with the one that I think is the lowest of the 3, and by no fault of their star players, but Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Portland, I know you've said many, many times they missed their chance. They should have kind of retooled after making, I think, the Western Conference Finals, and they didn't. They ran it back, and they've just kind of dipped since. Mm-hmm. Do you think Portland? I already know they're not in championship contention. Do you think Portland makes a move before the trade deadline to put themselves in the conversation? Like, do they package CJ McCollum and something to bring in someone to help out Dame?
First of all, Tone, with the group that they have, let's just say they keep this group together. I would not be surprised if they did not make the playoffs.
Wow.
Because as of where they are right now, I have them in the play-in tournament. I got them around 7, 8, 9. I got them in that area. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did not make the playoffs, which means, to answer your question, we get to the trade deadline. That's where they are. They're around the 7, 8, 9 seed, which means that we have to make a move to get better. Otherwise, we're going to be on the outside looking in. And if we do make the playoffs, we're out in round 1 again for the 3rd straight year, which not only are we going backwards, We're going backwards and we're staying here. We haven't improved in the last 3 years since 19. So I look at this team with Dame, with CJ, Nurkic. I mean, losing Derrick Jones Jr., I think that was a big deal. You know, Carmelo's gone, and I mean, that's 14, 15 a game that they're going to have to make up. But I think,
and he played a good role. Like he played his role in Portland.
Yes, he did. He was really good for them. I mean, they still got Robbie Covington as an all-league defender, and they still got Nurkic as a dirty work guy who can score on the block. But I think that the problem that we have with Portland is that they're not changing with the times. You know, these guys. This is the same team, and with it being the same team, I don't have an issue with that, Tone. I have an issue with it being the same team, and they haven't improved. That's the issue. And I would not be surprised if the Trailblazers didn't make the playoffs this year. That wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Do you know what the definition of insanity is?
It's the ability to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
And that's what Portland's doing. They're doing the same thing over and over again. They're expecting – what are they expecting? It's a change. It's crazy. So that's Portland. All right, these two teams are going to battle it out for the top of this division, I believe, especially with a healthy Jamal Murray. So the Denver Nuggets, the Utah Jazz. I just always shake my head.
They got a bad matchup in that, because I had them when they were playing against the Trailblazers, when they were playing against the Clippers. I'm sorry, when they were playing against the Clippers, I said the Clippers, because I think they would have beat Phoenix. I said the Clippers, Jazz winner wins the Western Conference. I was convinced of that, and the reason why Phoenix got past them is because Leonard got hurt. If Leonard doesn't get hurt, the Clippers beat them. Yeah. No question about it. And I think that if the Jazz they had gotten by the Clippers, I think they would have beat Phoenix. I think they would have beat Phoenix for a number of different reasons. I thought they were a better team defensively. I thought that in terms of their perimeter offense, I mean, I could appreciate what Chris Paul does, but with Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell, I just think that they got a bad matchup with the Clippers. That was the problem that we had.
I think the Jazz matches up not the same, but more similar to the way the Bucks did with the Suns.
Yes.
Right? You've got Holiday who can defend, you got Chris Middleton who's a good defender, and you have Giannis protecting the rim. Similar to you've got Conley, Mitchell, and why am I drawing a blank? And Gobert. Yep, right? It's to protect the rim. It's kind of that same formula that it was what you needed to beat the Suns. So I'm with you on that. I think Denver peaked last season, and even though they have Jamal Murray back, I think we're going to get the same thing we got from last year. I think Utah is the one that actually might take even though they finished first, I think they're the ones that actually do better this playoff round. They needed that experience. They needed that seasoning, if you will, in the playoffs. Because people underestimate how different basketball is played in the regular season and in the playoffs. And there's so many examples of, hey, it's the regular season. We go out, we play. Yeah, we have, plays and schemes and strategies. But when you're playing the same team, possibly 7 times in a row, you really dive deep into here's their tendencies. Here's the things that they do well. Here's the things that they're poor at. Well, let's try to take away all those things that they're really good at. And if they're going to beat us with the stuff that they're really poor at, well, then so be it. But it's going to make it tougher on them. The game slows down. There's more half-court offense. There's so many things. Like we talked about Gobert. Gobert wins Defensive Player of the Year, but is almost, I don't want to say a liability on defense during the playoffs, but it's a different way, right? They attack him differently in the playoffs. And now, did the Jazz learn enough to adjust? I think they could have. I look at so many teams where it's just, the Bulls getting beat by the Pistons and realizing, oh, we got to toughen up. We got to play better. They get over that hump. Heck, even Miami, when I say Miami, I mean LeBron. LeBron needed that loss to the Spurs to say, hey, what do I need to work on? Well, I need to be a better outside shooter because they just let me shoot threes. I need to be a better post up because I'm going to have matchups. I'm so big that I'm going to have matchups like Bruce Bowen. And if I can't post that person up, then they're just going to let me sit on the block. And so he became better. Then in the first loss, when they lose with Miami, it's, hey, I need to be dominant. I need to learn, I need to take over. And he learns from those two. And that's why look at the next 2 seasons, maybe the best 2 seasons of his career, right? And they win back-to-back chips. You had to learn. You had to take those and this isn't just sports. This is everything. You need to lose. You need to fail to learn. It makes you better. That's why I tell my kids, it's okay to fail, right? Just try, because you'll trust me. It'll make you better. If you succeed at everything, it's too easy, man. I'm telling you, you're probably not trying. Let's be honest. So I think this is what Utah needed. They needed to say, hey, just like you did, they were the better team.
Yeah,
they were the better team, and they should. And they should have been in the finals. So I hope they take that next step. So, so we talked about Utah. What are your thoughts on Denver? And then we'll
I'll
put this episode to bed.
When I talk about this Denver team, when you get swept out of the playoffs, I've always said this to you, Tone, I don't think you're close. Now, would Jamal Murray have made that much of a difference? I mean, they got swept, Tone. They didn't lose. They got swept. I don't know if Jamal Murray would have made that much of a difference. However, I will tell you this. I watched Bowl. He looks like he's getting better. I watched MPJ. He looks like he's getting better. This Denver team, I think that they're going to be something to deal with. I don't know. I don't think that they're better than the Jazz. I don't. But I got them. I got them as the 3rd seed in the Western Conference coming up this year, and I think that they'll get a favorable matchup. I do think that.
One viewer question. So they've been emailing me some questions for our show. So I'm going to ask one. We'll do it at the end of every episode. We'll call it like the mailbag. Mm-hmm. So we're going to ask this one question, and then we're going to move on. And right before, just let me remind you to subscribe. Set your reminders for Fluent and Chill, NBA edition Wednesdays, NFL edition Fridays, on YouTube, on Sports Fluent, on Chilltown Hoops, and of course, Mondays live on TikTok, 8 p.m. That being said, the Nets dominated the Lakers in a preseason game. Mm-hmm. And the question is, does it matter?
No. James didn't play. Russell Westbrook didn't play. Anthony Davis didn't play. No. Mm-hmm.
My immediate reaction always is, no, it's just a preseason. It doesn't matter. Then I start to think, well, the Nets had something, right? They were trying to send a message. Here's the problem with the preseason. And I give you this recent example. Mm-hmm. There was a team. Oddly enough, they played against the Lakers as well. And the Lakers dominated them in a preseason game. In fact, their stars played that game. They only scored 70 points in a full NBA game. That team was the Golden State Warriors. Mm-hmm. Steph Curry was playing. They scored 70 points on October 17th against the Lakers. Mm-hmm. That season, I didn't tell you what season it was yet. That season, that Warriors team went on to win 73 games. Mm. So when I tell you the preseason doesn't matter, the preseason does not matter. So I would put 0. This is for you. Who asked the question, and anybody else who thought it. I put 0 weight into anything that happens in the preseason. The only thing that matters is not getting hurt, right? Like that's really, I don't look at the scores. I don't look at stats. Just don't get hurt. Because that's the only thing that could affect your season is someone getting hurt.
Just so you guys know, in the 05 season, Peyton Manning went 0 for 4 in the preseason. They won a Super Bowl.
There you go. Yeah.
Bowl, so.
That's how much the preseason matters. All right, so that's it for this week's edition of the NBA edition of Fluent and Chill. Check us out every week. Until next week.
Take it light, but take it.